The celestial Concord Hall floated like a living monument in the dark canopy of space, a shimmering ring of glass and alloy. It was the beating heart of galactic diplomacy, where 243 species gathered to posture, debate, wage proxy wars, or pretend they didn't. Most came hungry for influence. A few came in fear. Only one came in silence. Ambassador Arin Hale sat in the back row with the rest of Earth's delegation, 6 humans in tailored gray suits, quiet and still as stone. This was their place. Always had been. For 54 years, humanity had attended every council session, signed every charter, agreed to every peace treaty, and never once asserted itself as a power. No grand speeches. No demands for votes. No fleets announced or armies shown. They had no glowing banners behind them, no military badges displayed. No ancient prophecies or conquests to brag about by every galactic metric. The humans were unremarkable. That's why they were always placed in the back, and Arin preferred it that way. As the assembly began filling with representatives, Arin observed in silence. He watched the towering Vrox imperators clatter in with polished war plates. The photon bodies of the Seraph Collective shimmer like living light, and the Chen worms with 100 eyes coil around their water vats. The grand chorus entered next, floating like literal music given form. All power, all showmanship, all desperate to be seen. Arin had no need to be seen. He tapped his wristpad, checking the encrypted window for one last time. A message blinked, all units aligned. No detection. Awaiting final signal. He swiped it clear before any nearby scanners could pick it up by accident. Ambassador, murmured his deputy, Dr. Merrick Jean, leaning in. They're staring again. Arin didn't have to look to know who. 3 rows up sat the Vrax commander, an 8-foot wall of spiked chitin and sharpened mandibles. The warlord Ralkadex had made it a habit of glancing back, sneering at the silent humans. Let them stare, Arin replied in a low voice. A lion doesn't explain itself to a hyena. Marek laughed under his breath. And which one are we today? The one that still has all its teeth, Arin said. The gavel sounded. Speaker Aravel of the Trident Dominion, ancient horse, covered in ceremonial seashell armor, opened the session. Her words wound through the hall, calm and practiced. Let the record show, she intoned, that the petition to review Earth's place as a council member will be heard today at the request of the Varex Imperium.
Alderum.
Just a little. The words hit the air like a spark against dry grass. Most eyes turned to the imposing Vrax commander as he rose. A giant on a platform, armor gleaming and claws interlocked, a warrior who lived for crowds. As he leaned in to speak, Arin noticed there was no microphone. He didn't need one. Before we begin, Ralkadex said, let me be clear. His mandibles clicked. The humans, he announced, have no place here. Disdain rippled in the air like shockwaves. Some delegates chittered in agreement. Others smirked. A few whispered nervously. Arin Hale did not move. He just stared ahead, calm. Unreadable, as if he'd heard this insult 100 times before. Because he had. He cracked his knuckles once. Quietly, Merrick leaned over again. Do we respond now, sir? No, Arin murmured. We wait. His eyes flicked toward the observation deck behind them, the one no one else ever looked at. His fingers brushed a second communicator tucked inside his sleeve. Nearly time. And if the Varex wanted a spectacle, they were about to get one. They didn't know it yet. But this was the last day the galaxy would ever laugh at humanity. Warlord Relkadex didn't pause after his declaration. He wanted momentum, fury, and spectacle. The kind of energy that stirred fear and recategorized enemies into prey. Humans, he sneered, flicking his claws dismissively toward the back seats, have contributed nothing to our collective strength. No fleets, no planetary defenses, no military assistance, no alliances. They sit, they watch, they take. Laughter bubbled from the chambers, quiet at first, then building as more joined in. You see, the warlord continued, pacing slowly across the platform. While every worthy species here has fought, bled, or sacrificed for peace, humanity has simply existed. He turned sharply and jabbed a claw toward the humans. So I ask, why should they remain among us? Arin Hale remained stone still. His team did too. Not one flinched or shook or shifted. They listened, eyes calm, posture collected, the stoic confidence of statues, which only infuriated the Vraks more. They don't even defend themselves, spat a delegate from the Tyvar Dominion. They lack honor, hissed a seraphic observer. Glowing brighter with agitation, or spine, muttered a Vrix negotiator. His triple mouths curving into sickly smiles, Arin said. Nothing. He simply folded his hands in his lap and watched as the crowd grew. Confident in their mockery, watched as the Alliance swallowed its own propaganda for the 51st year in a row. Watched and waited, not with fear, but with intention. A flicker on his wrist pad caught his eye. He turned it slightly, making sure only his palm could see the message. Second line in position beyond sensor range. No signatures detected. They were in place. The hall quieted as Speaker Aravel raised her voice. Calm, practiced, as neutral as language itself. Warlord Cadex of the Vrax Imperium, she intoned. The Council acknowledges your proposal. A majority support has been received to consider your petition. If approved, a vote will be held in 72 standard hours. The humans will have the opportunity to present what opportunity? Rokadex barked. They have nothing to say. Nothing to offer. Let them speak if they wish, but we already know what will come of it. The warlord turned and faced Arin directly. The entire chamber followed his gaze. Hundreds of eyes, lenses, compound pupils, and Glowcore staring all at once at the lone human who refused to react. A beat past another, Merrick shifted. It's just a fraction. The rest remained motionless. Arin finally stood. He didn't move quickly, didn't move dramatically, just rose with the slow grace of someone who felt no pressure from the weight of the moment. He nodded as the eyes of the galaxy pressed in. Ambassador Hale, Speaker Aravel addressed. You may respond. Arin's voice was soft, not weak, just quiet. It forced the room to listen. Thank you, Speaker, he began. And thank you, Warlord Cadex, for making your intentions very clear. He paused just long enough to create curiosity, then leaned in slightly. You believe humanity has done nothing, he said? You believe we offer nothing? That we survive only by the mercy of stronger species? Clicks and murmurs echoed. That is not correct, Arin continued lightly. But instead of arguing, or giving you lists, or trying to convince you otherwise, he clasped his hands behind him. We choose to wait. It was the same phrase Alina once used in another version of this story. But Arin spoke it with an entirely different tone, not passive, not quiet, certain, RHEL Cadex. Slammed a claw against the podium. Wait, he snarled. For what? Arin's gaze flicked ever so subtly to the observation deck behind him. For the truth, he said then. He sat .com. Unbirther. As though the entire galaxy wasn't watching, the hall erupted. Into disbelief and laughter and wafter and waff. Outraged Merrick leaned closer again. That was it? He whispered. Just wait? Arin's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. 3 days, he said quietly. That's all they get. After that? He glanced at the communicator embedded in his sleeve. The shadows won't stay shadows anymore. They didn't know it yet, but something vast was already on its way. And it wasn't human. The session adjourned in chaos. Some delegates rushed out in contempt. Others stayed behind to argue. A few rare species watched the humans with quiet calculation. Not mocking, but wondering. Wondering how a species so seemingly passive could remain so calm while being stripped of dignity in public. Arin Hale and his team didn't linger. They gathered their tablets and left the hall in silence. Just as they always had. No dramatic exits. No whispered strategies. only routine and presence, the kind that unnerved those used to power, displayed, not withheld. As they turned into the corridor leading to the diplomatic wing, Merrick finally spoke. "Ambassador," he started, "I need to ask, do we even plan to defend ourselves?" Arin didn't break stride. "We already have." He kept walking. "What does that mean?" Merrick pressed. "If we say nothing again during the vote, we are not here to speak for ourselves," Arin said. "We are here to give the galaxy one last chance to speak for themselves." Merrick frowned. "Not sure I follow." Arin stopped walking. He turned, and for the first time since the meeting began, something cracked in his expression, not fear, but gravity. "If they vote us out," Arin said, "they're not just choosing to remove humans from the council." He raised his eyes, and a chill crawled across Merrick's spine. "They're choosing to remove something else." The words hung in the corridor like cold vapor. Before Merrick could respond, footsteps clicked behind them. A small figure approached cautiously, tail puffed in nervous anticipation. It was Kelly Sith, a young observer from the Pith Collective, a fox-like species known for their sharp instincts and sharper curiosity. Kelly was one of the only beings who had ever watched the humans without condescension. Only confusion? Ambassador Hale? She called softly, ears pinned back in uncertainty. "May I speak? Privately?" Merrick narrowed his eyes. Arin nodded once, motioning his team forward. "You may." Kelly stepped closer, voice hushed. "That answer you gave, we wait. Most species would be scrambling now, strategizing, appealing, begging. But you..." Her pupils dilated slightly. "You're not nervous. You're not even bothered." Arin offered a faint, almost invisible smile. Observation noted. "It doesn't make sense. Your kind should be terrified. You have no allies, no warships, no leverage." Arin's eyes softened. "Are you sure about that last one?" She blinked. "You have leverage." "Yes," Arin said simply. "We just don't need to use it unless it's forced." Kelly inhaled slowly, eyes widening. "Ambassador, what are you hiding?" Arin leaned in a fraction, not threatening. "Just present." "For 50 years," he said quietly, "the galaxy assumed we needed them." His gaze drifted toward the large viewing window at the end of the hall, the one that looked out into a stretch of silent black. "They never once asked whether it was the other way around." Kelly followed his gaze. There was nothing out there until she blinked, for the briefest moment. She thought she saw something shift, like a patch of space that had texture breathing, and maybe then nothing. She shivered. "Ambassador," she whispered, "what's out there?" Arin stepped back. "In 3 days," he said, "everyone will find out." He walked away, leaving Kelly watching the void, now very suddenly aware that maybe that emptiness wasn't empty at all. That night, the private quarters of the human delegation, Arin stood alone at the large window. The stars shimmered beyond the force field, cold and eternal. He clasped his hands and bowed his head. It was silent prayer, no words spoken, no ritual. Just a quiet moment between a man and the God who brought him here. He looked at the stars after a long breath. "This can't just be an accident," he murmured. He didn't know if any alien sensors could detect the slight smile that followed. In the darkness beyond the station, something old had already begun to move. Day 1 passed quietly, almost too quietly. The diplomatic wing of the Celestial Concord was normally a place of constant motion. Delegates traveled in flocks, advisors argued inside chambers, and communications flashed in and out like strobe fire. But today, there was an uncanny quiet, broken only by hushed conversations about one question: why aren't the humans panicking? By midday, rumors began to spread, not officially, but through glances and whispers, through those who watched the humans and couldn't comprehend their calm. "They're in denial," one faction speculated. "No, I hear they're going to withdraw without contest," another suggested. "I heard their homeworld is collapsing," said a third with smug certainty. But the truth was, none of the humans spoke a word about the vote, not to anyone. And not a single one of them sent messages back home requesting reinforcements or political support. Merrick noticed the shift first. How the other delegations began to stare more frequently. Not with amusement now, but unease. "Ambassador," Merrick said, "while reviewing their datapads at lunch, whatever you're planning. It's already working. They don't know what to make of us." Arin took a slow sip of tea. "That's the point." Merrick paused. "We still won't speak before the vote." Arin shook his head. "Not a word. They'll think we've surrendered." "No," Arin corrected him softly. "They'll think we're waiting for something." Merrick sat back. "And are we?" he asked. Arin didn't answer. Not with words. He simply looked at his chrono and tapped the embedded button twice. Phase 2. Begins synchronization.
Away.
Outside the Concord station, the shadows stirred. Kelly Sith watched the feed from the independent observation deck. Her paws were trembling, which made it hard to steady the camera. But she couldn't stop staring into that black ocean of nothing. She'd requested a personal pass to the viewing deck, claiming junior research documentation. Just enough clearance to monitor the scans of external space. But the scan readouts were wrong. Every few minutes, the sensor readings glitched, not by much, just enough that a blip or warp effect flickered for 1 or 2 frames, then vanished again. Kelly enlarged the pattern and ran it through a data stabilizer. When the frame became clear, her fur puffed as a chill crawled over her spine. There was something out there, something not just massive, but organized. 12 massive thermal signatures arranged in perfect formation, except they didn't move like ships. No metallic framework. No hull, no engines. No life signs compatible with machinery or carbon-based biology, but whatever they were alive. Alive, watching and getting closer. Her voice caught in her throat. She slammed her recorder shut and ran. Heart racing, her first instinct was to warn someone, anyone. But her second instinct froze her. She had no idea who to trust. The humans. The Council? The Vayax? Everyone claimed to know the dangers of the galaxy, but no one, not even in the archives, had ever documented anything like what she was seeing. She thought back to her conversation with Arin. We don't need to show strength unless forced. He wasn't bluffing. He was waiting for the galaxy to make a choice that would decide whether those things out there would stay in the shadows or not. On the observation deck that night, Arin stood alone again beneath the stars. His hand was still clasped behind him, but this time, instead of whispering a prayer, he spoke quietly, just enough for his cum implant to detect the vocal signal. "Status?" That massive, haunting voice responded. "We are here." It spoke perfect English, but Arin had never heard anything like it. Slow, deep, ancient. We continue to wait. Do they choose wisdom? Arin closed his eyes. We'll know soon, and if they do not? Arin's face hardened. Then we stop protecting them. Silence. Then the voice, soft as a dying star. Understood. In the void, something older than nations opened its eye. By the second day, the entire station was on edge. Delegates walked the hallways with sharper eyes, their glances flicking toward the humans and then away just as fast, the way someone might look at a sleeping predator and pretend it wasn't there. Even those who didn't believe in rumors had started to speak the name of Earth in whispers. It wasn't mockery anymore, it was curiosity. And beneath that, a quiet tremor of something else. Uncertainty. By midday, new conversations had begun to surface. Conversations that weren't about expulsion, but speculation. Are they hiding a secret weapon? No, they don't have the industry for it. Then what? Why aren't they begging for their place back? They're humans. They always play the long game. Arin Hale noticed it all without reacting. He held to the same routine, attending morning briefings, eating with his team in the common area, reviewing trade proposals that, according to the Vrax, shouldn't even matter anymore. Merrick, on the other hand, was growing restless. You're still not going to give a statement? He asked, as they shared a quiet lunch. A speech? A document? Something. Arin cut into a small slice of bread and answered calmly, "No." "But what if they decide we've surrendered?" Arin looked up, eyes steady. "You can only surrender to someone who holds power over you." "Oh." Merrick's brow furrowed as he paused. "You don't think they do?" Arin didn't speak. He just shook his head once. Slow and deliberate. That was when a chittering voice from a neighboring table cut through the low murmur of the dining hall. "They're broken," clearly said a Crothian analyst, not bothering to lower his voice. "They've already given up, which is what happens when a species has no teeth." Another laughed, or claws or fangs, or Merrick's hand clenched around his cup. Arin's didn't. Instead, he lifted his brows slightly and said, loud enough for the nearby delegates to hear, "Strange, then, that we've never been bitten." The table went silent, not because of the words, but because of the calm behind them. Everyone could feel it now. Something was off. And the humans weren't trying to hide it anymore. Meanwhile, across the station, Kelly Sith stared at her system screen in disbelief. The anomaly wasn't an anomaly anymore. What had been flickers and blurs. Yesterday had turned into something unmistakable. 12 colossal heat signatures. No shields. No engines. No metal. No known biology, but alive. Moving closer toward the Concorde station, not drifting, not orbiting. Approaching CA, Eli played the footage back at least 20 times, each time with a new mix of awe and mounting dread. She tried again to access. The deep-level scan systems and the console denied her access. She didn't give up. She rerouted through the Pelth Collective's database. Access denied again. Then she tried one last time, bypassing the standard layer and forcing a raw scan link. Alert. Permissions. Revakiti's fur bristled. Someone had just shut down her access. Not a glitch, not a system crash, a command override. Someone knew she was watching. She grabbed her recorder and sprinted down the corridor. She didn't know what she was going to say or who she trusted enough to tell, but she had to find Arin Hale. He knew something, and whatever was coming. It wasn't waiting for permission. That evening, Arin stood once again in the quiet observation lounge on the dark side of the station. The stars gleamed like frozen fire, thousands of perfect, distant lights, the kind that remind a man how small he is. Arin Hale bowed his head again, not in fear, but in reverence. "Someone wanted me alive for this," he whispered. Not even the silence dared respond. That night, the darkness outside the station finally blinked. Kelly Sith didn't walk to the human's diplomatic wing. She ran. Her claws clicked against the metal floor, her breath sharp and fast, heart pounding with every step. She didn't care that her authority could be revoked, that observers were sworn not to interfere, or that every surveillance node in the hallway was tracking her unauthorized movement. She had seen the truth outside the glass, and the truth was moving. She reached the humans' door and stopped. Not because she hesitated, but because she felt something shift behind her. A hum, a vibration, like a distant engine. If engines could sound alive, Kelly turned. Through the viewing window at the end of the corridor, the stars were still shining, calmly, silent, motionless. Eternal, but the darkness wasn't. It pulsed. Like a heart, she stared. Frozen, then a shadow. Not a ship, not a comet. Not anything mechanical, drifted across the stars. So large it seemed to swallow starlight. Her pupils dilated wide, her tail puffing out in fear. Something was out there, something alive. Something that should not be. She didn't knock. She slammed her hand against the panel. "Ambassador Hale. Please, I need to speak with you." The doors opened slowly, almost serenely. Merrick stood first, expression tight. "Kelly." "What?" But then Arin appeared behind him, and without any warning, Kelly broke. "They're out there," she blurted. "Something's out there. Something huge. They're coming toward the station, and you, Kelly," Arin said. Quiet but firm. "Breathe." She'll see OULDN single quotes. She was trembling. They're alive, she whispered. They're not ships. They're not drones. Arin didn't look startled. He didn't even look surprised. Merrick looked stunned, though, jaw stiffening as realization hit. She saw them, he muttered. They must have moved closer. Arin nodded slowly. Their positioning. Kelly stared between them, stunned. You knew? You knew they were out there? Arin met her eyes directly. Yes, her voice cracked. Why are they here? Arin didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked past her to the viewing glass and looked into the black. Then he spoke not to her, but to the stars. They're here because for 54 years, we've protected a galaxy that never knew it needed protecting. Merrick stepped up beside him. They've been with us the whole time, he explained, voice quiet. Silent, cloaked, waiting. And now, Arin said, the waiting ends. Kelly staggered back against the wall, trembling. You're not just quiet diplomats, she whispered. We're friends, Arin finished softly. Friends to something the rest of the galaxy once feared. Something they forgot. His eyes flicked to her. And now they're going to remember. A sound echoed through the metal of the station, deep, rhythmic, like the low, vibrating song of a whale echoing through water-taut CA. Eli looked up in horror. What? What was that? Arin's voice was calm, breathing. Her blood froze, breathing. Arin nodded. They're alive. And they're waiting for the vote. Kelly pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. You can't let this happen. Arin, if they're exposed, if the rest of the council sees them, Arin turned to her, eyes calm. They will. And when they do, they'll learn what real protection looks like. Not from fleets, not from armies, but from beings who cross galaxies just to keep their promise. Kelly stared at him, terrified but also transfixed. What are they? She whispered. Arin didn't hesitate. They are the Leviathans, he said, ancient as the stars. And they are the reason humanity has never needed to raise a weapon. Just then, the station lights flickered. A shudder ran through the walls, like the vibration of something vast drifting past the edge of sensor range. Kelly's heart thudded dead. Merrick moved to lock the room. Arin Hale looked out the window and whispered something only he and God could hear. On the eve of the vote, the galaxy finally noticed it was being watched. The morning of the final day arrived. By tradition, this was when the accused species and their accusers made final statements, and the council voted. It should have felt predictable, ceremonial even. Instead, the entire Concord station felt coiled, tense. Every corridor seemed a little quieter. Every voice sharpened. Every scan of the void a little more frantic. The air felt thick, like the calm before a storm. No one knew how to stop Hale, and his team walked into the dining deck like nothing had. Changed, breakfast, coffee.com, conversation. No one else looked. Calm. Delegates whispered behind their claws or tendrils, glancing up from tables and data displays. Even species with no visible eyes somehow managed to convey the suspicion in their posture or breathing rhythms. 1. Delegate from the Cracks Bio Coalition, a being of fluid biology shaped into a humanoid mass, approached cautiously. Ambassador. Hey, it gurgled. May I? Make a direct inquiry. Arin looked up from his tea. Of course, many have observed, the creature said, that your delegation has not contacted Earth since the petition was made. No strategic communication. No external requests. Why is that? Arin didn't hesitate. Because we don't need anything we don't already have. That answer seemed to freeze the being in place, not because of the words, but because of how. Casually he said them, then the lights in the room flickered. Only for a second. Only long enough for two nearby delegates to gasp and glance toward the ceiling. Arin said nothing. But Merrick shifted. That wasn't internal, he muttered under his breath. External interference. Arin agreed with a faint nod. It's begun. Across the station, Kelly Sith rushed into the observation wing again, heart pounding. She didn't care that she was no longer supposed to be there. She'd been locked out of every official scanner array, rerouted from every sensor channel. So instead, she made a new plan. She grabbed an old emergency scope, a relic no one used anymore because it wasn't connected to station systems. It was manual, analog, dumb, which was exactly what she needed. She aimed it at the void, adjusting the manual dial, and gasped so hard the breath stuttered. In her throat, not 12 massive shapes now, but more, dozens, maybe more than that. They were rising from the black like giant shadows being revealed, uncloaking at a rate so slow, it felt intentional. As if they wanted to give the galaxy time to understand just how deeply it had miscalculated what humanity was. These weren't warships. They were alive. And they were surrounding the station like a fleet of silent gods waking up. Kelly tried to scream for someone, anyone, and her voice cracked on the first attempt. She stepped back, almost fell, grabbed the rail, and ran. She had to reach the assembly hall before the vote. Meanwhile, in his private quarters, Arin stood alone again, eyes closed, breathing slow. This time, he didn't bow his head. This time, he lifted it. 3 days, he said softly. You've kept watch. You've been patient. You've protected without being seen. His voice wavered. And that was the closest thing to emotion he'd shown in months. But no one can say they weren't warned now. The lights in his room flickered once. Then a deep, resonant voice filled the space. No speakers. No comlink. Just vibration and presence. We are ready, Arin. It was a voice from the void. Massive, old, impossibly calm. We will do only what is required. No more, I know, Arin said. I trust you. And we trust you, the voice replied, then silence. Not empty silence, the kind that breathes. As Arin headed for the council chamber with his team, Merrick finally spoke the question that had been building. You ever regret it? He asked, letting them think we were weak all these years. Arin didn't slow. Never. Why? Because the truth always lands harder after the silence. He walked into the council hall as the crowd turned to face him, and the first alarm siren sounded across the station. Something was no longer hiding in the dark. Now it was coming into view. The Grand Assembly Hall was packed to its highest tier. Not a single seat sat empty. Not one. Even delegates who hadn't bothered attending full sessions in decades had returned for this one. The vote to remove Earth was supposed to be a mere formality, a ceremonial dismissal of the weakest member of the council. But everyone could feel something was wrong. Something was watching. Arin Hale entered without ceremony. No grand posture. No entourage. No visible defense. Just a calm stride in the same gray delegation uniform Earth had always worn. Silence swelled through the chamber. Even Warlord Ralkadex, armored and bristling with ceremonial weapons, paused as he turned to stare at the human delegation. There was no fear in Arin's face. No, worry, just focus, and a restraint that hit like a warning. Speaker. Aravel struck the gavel. Begin council proceedings. The ancient voice echoed like time carved into air. Today, she said, we decide whether Earth, currently a member of this council, shall retain or forfeit its seat. A motion was raised by the Vrax Imperium, and support was confirmed by majority last session. She nodded toward the warlord. You may begin your final statement. Rolkatic strode to the podium, claws scraping. His mandibles twitched in triumph as he began. Fellow council members, he boomed, I speak here for all who value strength. For decades, we have allowed weakness to take a seat among us. Weakness disguised as silence, as neutrality, as cooperation. He sneered toward the humans. Earth contributes nothing. No fleets. No fleets. No force, no presence. They have no battles to speak of. No borders worth fighting for. No allies strong enough to defend them. Shuffling and muttering rippled through the audience. Let us be honest, the warlord continued. They are not here to lead. They are not here to fight. They are not even here to negotiate. He pointed upward, toward the chamber dome displaying a rotating star chart, the territories of the known galaxy lit in pride. They exist only because we allow them to. He paused, soaking in the murmurs of approval, and now we choose whether they continue to sit among us or return home to fade from relevance. The applause from certain sections was loud. Arin didn't move. When the speaker called his name, Ambassador Hale, Earth may now respond. He rose slowly and walked toward the podium. No datapad, no prepared speech, just his hands, calm at his sides. He stood there for 5 seconds, 10, 15, until the silence became unbearable. Kelly entered the hall at that exact moment, huffing pale, clutching a portable scanner. She froze as Arin spoke his first words. "We will not argue," Arin began, "and we will not defend ourselves." Gasps broke across the chamber. Merrick stayed frozen behind him. Even the Varex warlord stiffened. Arin raised his eyes across the room, not with defiance, but with pure, disarming honesty. "For 54 years, we let you draw your conclusions about us. We let you measure us by what you could see. Fleets, guns, armies." He paused. "That was our mistake." He turned slightly, facing the same observation deck he'd sat in front of for his entire diplomatic career. "Because while you judged what we put in front of you," his voice lowered, "you never once looked behind us." A hush cut through the room like a blade. Arin tapped a hidden switch on his wrist. The chamber lights flickered. Every holographic screen in the room blinked, and suddenly, every exterior sensor feed, every angle of space around the station flooded the displays. Stars, black, stillness, then dash movement, something massive floated across the screen. Something so large it blotted constellations from view. And it wasn't alone. 1, 2, 5, 8, 12. Dozens more shifting in the black. Just beyond the viewing ports, alive, breathing, pulsing with energy, and every one of them was facing the station. The hall went still. Impossible. Still, Kelly trembled. The Vrax warlord took a step back. "Speaker." Aravel dropped her gavel. Arin Hale looked up at the galaxy's gathered elite and spoke the words that would end an era. "We were never alone." And then, for the first time in recorded galactic history, something answered back. Gasps, screams, shouts, in 100 alien languages. The council chamber erupted into chaos, delegates scrambling from their seats, security units flooding in, sensors chiming in emergency tones the station had never used before. And yet, Arin Hale stood very still, as if he'd been waiting for this moment all his life, one by one. The shadows in space resolved into colossal figures, each bigger than the station itself, each organic, each alive, each moving with the slow, deliberate presence of something that had no need to rush. Creatures with skin like textured starlight and scars older than any empire. Weapons powered, defensive drones activated. Bioshields rippled across the chamber's transparent dome. It did not matter. Nothing inside the station was big enough to challenge what was outside. "Speaker." Aravel clutched her podium with trembling hands. What are those?" she demanded. "What are we seeing?" Arin lifted his chin. "Those," he said, "are the Leviathans," as if responding to the sound of their name. The largest of the beings shifted, and the image on the main display zoomed toward a single eye, big, enough to rival a planet's moon. Then it blinked, and the universe seemed to blink with it. The hall fell silent, not by force, by instinct. Every living being in that chamber felt. It dots the weight of something ancient, something intelligent, something that had already outlived every civilization present. Then a sound unfurled across every hearing organ, speaker, and vibratory membrane. Not through machinery, not through transmission, but through resonance. "We have waited long enough." Voice echoed in perfect galactic, common, vibrating deep into the bones of every listener. Merrick exhaled like the air had been punched out of him. Kelly's heart stopped, then resumed with frantic rhythm. The Vrax warlord, the great. Relkadox took another involuntary step back. Arin didn't move. Grandfather. Deep, the eldest Leviathan spoke again. We are not your threat. We are your shield. Silent awe washed through the chamber. Arin finally turned away from the screen and faced the assembly. For over 5 decades, he said, humanity has been quietly escorted through this galaxy. Everywhere we went, every colony we built, every trade lane we crossed, they were there. He nodded slowly, respectfully toward the stars. They've stopped pirate fleets, turned back extinction plagues, redirected rogue meteors, interrupted invasions before they reached any of you. Grandfather Deep rumbled again, voice like ocean thunder. We did not do it for gratitude, or glory, or payment. The second Leviathan spoke, its voice lighter, carrying a younger echo. We did it because the humans asked us not to let the galaxy burn. The words rippled, shock began shifting, slowly into shame. Some delegates looked down. Others looked away. A few looked at the humans for the very first time in their careers, truly looked. The Vrax warlord growled low, a rigid defensive instinct, trying desperately to reassert dominance. You have allied with weapons of destruction. He snapped, though his voice quivered. That is not diplomacy. That is manipulation. Arin raised a hand, and for the first time, his voice sharpened. They are not weapons. He let the truth land like a hammer. They are people. The entire chamber stared back at the screens, at the living mountains floating in perfect formation, not ships, not monsters. Life older than every star the council had named. Grandfather Deep spoke again. You have called the humans weak. The chamber froze, but they are the only ones who tried to speak to us without fear. A pulse of light passed across their vast forms, subtle, synchronized, almost like a heartbeat. Arin turned back to the crowd, voice quiet. Humanity didn't ask them to fight for us. We asked them to walk beside us. Then he spoke the line he'd been waiting to deliver, the line that no one in that room would ever forget. We didn't stay silent because we were weak. We stayed silent because we weren't alone. The lights in the hall flickered, the void outside shifted, and something else began to glow, a symbol. Faint at first, then brightening as every Leviathan aligned. A ring, a promise, a warning. And then the galaxy learned what silence had really been protecting them from. The illumination from the Leviathans outside the chamber grew stronger, not threatening, but revealing. Their bodies shimmered with patterns of bioluminescent light, like constellations painted across flesh the size of cities. Then one of them spoke again, not Grandfather Deep, but a new voice, calm and clear. We have turned back the darkness in your place. The crowd went still. Arin Hale's expression didn't change, but his hands clasped behind his back. And for the first time, there was a faint tightness in his jaw. This galaxy you call civilized, the Leviathan continued, has never truly been safe. Holographic screens flickered. Unexpected data appeared. Never before seen. Rogue fleet. Invisible to council sensors approaching. The border of a pelth trade route, then vanishing. Pocket of void space tearing open near the Zix. Territories then collapsing in on itself. A meteor storm on track for the celestial. Choir's main habitat, then deflected by something. Unseen, each video ended the same way. Threat. Neutralized, no official record filed, the delegates watched. Slack-jawed and speechless. Kelly swallowed hard and felt tears burn behind her eyes. She knew now that the warnings were real. The galaxy had always been one step away from ruin. They just hadn't known. Grandfather Deep spoke again. His voice was quieter this time, almost disappointed. You did not see the storm. Because we held the walls. His body pulsed again, and on every screen a list of vanished ships appeared. Hundreds, warships, pirate vessels, illegal contractors, radiation harvester fleets. Donald Klon, a human researcher sitting behind Arin, finally spoke up. All those ships that disappeared over the years. He murmured. It wasn't malfunction. It wasn't pirates. It was them, Merrick finished. Cleaning the threats we didn't even know existed. The words echoed. Heavy. Unavoidable. A small, crystalline being from the Seraph Collective finally rose from her seat, glowing pale and flickering. Why? She asked, voice trembling. Why protect us? Why save us when we didn't even know you existed? Grandfather Deep replied with a softness that seemed to vibrate through every wall because someone had to. It wasn't pity in his tone. It wasn't superiority. It was something far quieter, duty. And beneath it a hint of something else. Respect, ARI, and finally turned to. Address the council again. You ridicule humanity. Because we do not shout, he said. You mocked us because we did not posture or demand attention. Because we didn't measure strength the way you do. He paused. And that's fine. You're not wrong to question silence. But silence is not weakness. He nodded once toward the stars. Sometimes. It's a shield. And then the council screens. Changed again. Not data, not video. A map of the galaxy, except this one didn't show. Territory, it showed something else. Active. Threats against civilization, neutralized before reaching council. Space non-hostile diplomatic contacts, maintained by Leviathan intervention breached areas still. Held back outside council. Knowledge the map flickered. Thousands of red points lit up like uncountable stars. Every one marked an invisible war that never reached them because the humans, with the Leviathans, stopped it first. Whispers turned to murmurs. Murmurs turned to trembling silence. Arin Hale took a breath and let the chamber fully absorb what they were seeing. Then he spoke the line that shattered the illusion of superiority forever. You have called us quiet. But what you didn't see was everything we silenced so you could sleep. Dead stillness. Utter silence. Then, the station trembled, not physically, but through every communication channel at once warnings. Sensor lock, unidentified. Intrusions. All registered at once. Something else was coming, not the Leviathans. Something they'd been holding back, and now, without the silence, it was coming through. And this time the darkness didn't stop at the border. The alarms didn't stop. They didn't even pulse or cycle like normal threat warnings. They held a constant tone, shrill, continuous, more urgent than any diplomatic crisis in the councils. History of the station didn't shake because something hit it. It shook because something massive hit. Reality near it. Arin Hale didn't flinch. He took one step back from the podium, and that small movement was all it took for every human delegate to fall instantly, silently into formation around him. Merrick checked a wrist console. Kelly felt the air shift and turned toward the wide view holoscreen in the center of the chamber. Something was coming in too. View, not like the Leviathans, not a gentle reveal, not a graceful arrival. This thing tore its way into space. Jagged tear in the void, as if someone had grabbed the universe and clawed it open. Its edges writhed and pulsed. Reality didn't bend. It bled. Gasps echoed. Someone screamed. Security drones deployed shields. Through the rupture, something began to emerge. A ship? A creature? Both. Geometry and flesh-blended angles sharp enough to cut thought itself in tissue that writhed without a single pattern. The thing was made of absence. The absence of sanity, of physics, of peace. Its surface rippled like dying eyes and dying stars. Kelly whispered, "What is that?" Merrick answered, voice low, "That's what they've been holding back. Delegates scrambled like insects in a burning nest, some trying to initiate emergency jump evacuation, others calling home fleets, others simply collapsing in horror. The Vrax warlord, Ral Kadutz, drew a kinetic blade, pure instinct. "We will defend this council with blood," he snarled. Arin didn't turn to face him. "Your blood won't be enough," the warlord snarled louder. Silence. Human, another alarm made his sentence. "Breach warning. Interdimensional. Structure detected, form attempting manifestation into council space shielding." Inadequate Kaylee's fur bristled violently. "That thing isn't coming from space," she said. "It's forcing its way in from somewhere else." Arin nodded. "They destroy dimensions," he said. "Not planets. They don't conquer. They unmake." The warlord's mandibles twitched. How long have you known these things exist?" Arin finally faced him. "Long enough." A voice boomed across the chamber then, the Leviathan's voice, amplified, resonant, unstoppable. "Move away from the window," no one questioned. Even those who didn't understand the tone reacted instinct, forcing them to obey a sound that felt older than EVOLUT. A pulse of light rippled across the Leviathans outside, bioluminescent. Glyphs shimmered across their forms like neural pathways activating across a giant brain. Then the largest Leviathan opened its mouth, not to roar, not to speak, to sing, a frequency so deep it hit bone before it hit ears. A harmonic lattice of resonance waves pulsed outward, colliding with the rupture like invisible walls of sound. The tier in reality shuddered, fought back, tried to widen. Another Leviathan joined the song, then another, and another, and another, until a choir of titanic beings sang in perfect, terrifying unity, their voices interlocking like armor. Wrapping the ship, creature thought inside, cage made of sound and force and intention. Merrick spoke in awe. "They're not attacking it. They're binding it." Arin nodded once. "That's how they win." Kelly watched the Leviathans press back the impossible. Watched the tier in space quiver like a wounded beast, and felt tears run down the sides of her face. "They're saving us again. Even now." Arin's voice trembled for the first time since the hearings began. "They do it because life matters. Even when the life they're protecting doesn't even know they exist." The singing peaked. The rip in reality calmed, and with a final groan that resonated across time itself, it closed. The chamber went deathly silent. The Leviathans went motionless, as if waiting, as if tired. Then Grandfather Deep spoke again. Not in triumph, not in warning, just simple truth. "This is what silence has cost us." Arin turned back to the room. "For 54 years, he said, voice low but fierce, "we never asked you for anything." He let the weight of the moment settle. "But now you owe us the truth. Because this time, the humans weren't the ones being judged. The galaxy was." No one dared speak. The council chamber, the same hall where species had waged wars of words for centuries, sat frozen in a silence so total it felt alive, as if even the walls were holding their breath. The rupture was gone. The creature was gone. The Leviathans were quiet again, their luminescent patterns dimmed to a resting pulse, but the memory of what had just happened, of what had nearly entered their reality, hung like smoke in the air. Speaker. Aravel was the first to find her voice, though it trembled as it left her lips. "Ambassador Hale," she said, "the council requires an explanation." "For everything?" Arin didn't nod or bow. He just looked at her with an expression so calm. It seemed unreal. "An explanation," he said softly, "is a small price compared to what the Leviathans have paid." "We did not ask them to intervene," Aravel said, trying to recover composure. "Nor did we give permission," Arin's voice sharpened, "but only by a fraction. They didn't need your permission. They needed your silence." The room flinched. "You think we hid behind them?" Arin continued, stepping closer to the center of the chamber. "You think we used them as a threat? You think their presence is leverage? His gaze swept the room, not angry, not pleading, just truthful. But that's not how this works. He waited, letting their assumptions crumble in full view. For half a century, the Leviathans have been fighting a war none of you even knew existed. A war against things that don't play by the rules of physics or reason. A war that can't be won with fleets or shields or soldiers. He gestured toward the stars. You only saw peace because they paid the price of it. The Virax warlord, less defiant now, more wary, finally spoke. And what do they want? What do you want? Arin took a slow breath. The same thing we've always wanted. His voice softened. Time. Delegates exchanged confused looks. Time. Someone echoed, yes, Arin said. Time for civilizations to grow before the dark reaches them. Time for the galaxy to stop tripping into the same mistakes. Time to learn that unity means more than treaties and trade disputes. Paused, then turned toward the Leviathans once more, in time to repay what we... Oh, the chamber lights flickered again, not malfunction. Not warning, acknowledgement. The Leviathans were listening. Arin Hale stepped back toward the podium, looked every species in the eye, and said the words that weren't a demand, but a truth the galaxy had earned. You wanted to judge humanity? Fine, he nodded once. But understand this. For 54 years, we were the shield. And you didn't even know there was a sword. Kelly's hands trembled at her sides, though she didn't move. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. They were never the story. She murmured. They were the silence between every story. Grandfather Deep spoke again. We will not fight your wars. We will not rule your stars. We only protect what chooses peace. Slow. Trembling realization swept over every corner. Of the room, it had never been about power. It had always been about choice. Merrick finally spoke, voice rough with emotion. You still think weakness is measured in weapons? He said, humans stood here without fleets, and the strongest species in the galaxy stood behind us without ever being seen. Silence. Then Speaker Aravel lifted her gavel. Voice steady again, but changed. We will prepare a new motion. She paused, eyes softening toward Arin. This time, the vote will not be whether Earth is allowed to stay. She took a slow, deliberate breath. But whether we deserve them to stay. The chamber rippled with stunned shock. Kelly's heart thudded dead. The Virax warlord lowered his blade, and for the first time in council history, the galaxy understood who had been doing the watching all along. But even as the galaxy reconsidered its future, something else was already moving in the dark. The shock wave of revelation was still, rippling through the grand assembly when the quiet crack in the air began. It wasn't a siren. It wasn't a warning alarm. It was something subtler, a shift in the station's atmosphere. Like the air itself was suddenly colder than it should be. Delegates rubbed their arms. Some blinked in discomfort. Others froze, sensing something. Merrick noticed it first. He checked his wrist console. Temperature drop, he murmured. Localized to this level. Kelly's ears perked in alarm. But the breach is closed. Not all breaches shine, Arin said, voice low. Kelly spun toward him. There's more? Arin closed his eyes for a moment, called up an old memory. A warning given decades ago, where great power stands. Another always watches. He opened his eyes again. Yes, the Leviathans weren't the only ones who took notice of humanity. A hush spread like frost through the room. Then, in the upper corner of the chamber, just beneath the dome's projector array, a thin line of shadow began to separate from itself. A spot of pure absence, a hole where light refused to exist. At first, it was nothing more than a speck. Then it widened, uncurled, took shape. Not an organic form this time, not a ship. Not a life form, something in between. A mouth with no mouth. A form that rippled like regret. Kelly took a terrified step back. What is that? Arin stared hard at the thing in the corner, unwavering, the ones who break what the Leviathans protect. The temperature dropped further, not physically, but emotionally, a psychic cold. A hopelessness that had nothing to do with the body. Delegates shuddered as invisible tendrils of thought brushed their minds. Thoughts of surrender. Thoughts of futility. Thoughts that whispered, "It won't matter." The Vrax warlord stumbled, claws clutching his head. What? What is it doing? Arin's jaw tightened. The Leviathans fight with sound, song, harmonics. He nodded toward the writhing shape. This one fights with despair. Kelly gripped the railing for balance. We're not safe? Even inside? No, Arin said. They're inside because we've stopped pretending they aren't real. The shadow thing twitched. Growing tendrils that trailed like dripping ink sliding across glass. A low, broken voice echoed from no direction and every direction. You were meant to fall, Kelly's breath. Caught Merrick's shaking hand hovered over his. Emergency beacon. But before he could activate it, the Leviathans outside stirred again. There. Bodies didn't move. Their light did. They pulsed once. Twice then, a glow trailed up their forms like a dum-dum-dung-dung-dung-dung. Beacon being lit across a city the size of worlds. A single note boomed. Out, low, sure, immovable. Not a warning this time, eh? Promise. The shadow being flickered, recoiled. Its tendrils snapping back like burned threads. Arin's voice rose quietly but strong. You don't belong here. The creature twitched like it was trying to shift its form again. But couldn't. Not while the Leviathans were awake. Not while they were watching. Behind Arin, Grandfather Deep's voice filled the chamber again. Reverberating like gravity itself. Do not fear the voices in the dark. Another Leviathan joined in, gentler, younger. Fear the day they stop speaking. The shadow trembled. Then, as if pulled through a pinhole, it vanished. Gone, no trace. Just the echo of words left like a stain behind it. You cannot save them forever. The chamber stared, not in victory, in understanding. Arin turned calmly toward the council. This was never about one vote, he said. This was about whether the galaxy stands together or dies separately. He paused. Choose wisely. As he stepped back, Kelly stared at him, seeing him fully for the first time. The calm, the conviction, the silence that wasn't submission, but stewardship, she whispered, almost without meaning to. You knew all of this, and still believed we could change. Arin Hale simply answered, I choose to believe the light wasn't an accident. But while the galaxy reconsidered everything they thought they knew, the countdown to the vote continued. The chamber was quieter than it had ever been. Not silent, but deeply, unnervingly still. Delegates sat rigid, minds reeling not just from what they had seen, but from what they had felt. A creature that attacked through hopelessness. An ancient species that defended the galaxy in silence. A single human who knew all of it, never boasted. Speaker. Aravel stood once more. Though her hand trembled slightly as she lifted the gavel, per council protocol, she began slowly. We must now proceed to the motion that was originally on the agenda. Shifting ultrasonic chatter rippled through the chamber. No one dared interrupt, but they were all thinking the same thing. The vote can't possibly still happen, Aravel continued. The formal motion, as raised by the Vrax Imperium, is to remove Earth from this council on the grounds of... No, the interruption was not loud, but it might as well have. Shattered the floor. The word had come not from Arin Hale, not from any human, but from the representative of the Seraph Collective, the crystalline life form who had been silent. The entirety of the trial, she rose, body glowing with pale gold light. The terms of this motion are no longer valid, she said, because the foundation upon which it was made has been proven false. Whispers, gasps. The Vrax warlord bristled, but not defiantly, uneasily. Aravel blinked. You contest the motion? I do more than contest, the Seraph delegate said. I call for its withdrawal. A vote to remove Earth now would not be a judgment. It would be a crime. Her crystalline facets glimmered like stars caught in geometric form. And then, voice steady, she added, "And I will not be complicit in the abandonment of those who have protected us in silence." Murmur of agreement rose from the Echo's Rotarians, from the Alchemy Triune, even from the normally austere chroniclers. Guild. Arin Hale stood still, watching, not relieved, not surprised, just present. The seraph raised her voice, the tones like music. "I propose a new motion," she declared, "to grant Earth not removal, but elevation." The chamber fell silent again. "But not to status above us," she clarified, "nor beneath us, but beside us, as equals, as allies." The words rippled through the council. Kelly felt her throat tighten. This was happening. This was real. The Vrax, warlord, stood then, but slowly. His mandibles twitched, not in aggression, but in something closer to recognition. "We misjudged them," Relkadak said reluctantly. "We saw silence, and thought it cowardice." He paused, then added in a tone the galaxy had never heard from Vrax's lips. "But even those of us born for war know a greater fighter. When we see one," the admission shook the room. Speaker Aravel lowered. Her gaze then lifted the gavel again. "A motion has been formally raised," she announced. "The council will now vote to declare Earth's state as a sudden comes." Chirp cut her off. A station-wide channel override. Then, words appeared across every surface in the assembly. Alert. Unknown entity approaching. Larger than previous breach Leviathan formations repositioning. The room stiffened. Everyone turned toward the viewing screens, and they're emerging from the shadows far beyond the last star of the system. Something even the Leviathans braced against. Not a creature, not a fleet. Something. Older. Something awake. Kelly felt her breath freeze in her chest. "What is that?" she whispered. "Arin." Hale closed his eyes, and for the first time, truly, he allowed himself to feel fear. Something that Leviathans warned us about. He turned to Marek. "It's not here for war. It's here to find out whether we stand together, or fall one by one." And when the darkness came to judge the galaxy, the question became whether humanity had taught them how to answer. The chamber's screens magnified the incoming presence, and the delegates who had once scoffed at Earth's insignificance felt their own smallness. Pushing down like gravity, this was not. Like the breach creature, this was not a rogue horror. Slipping into reality to feed, this was something vast and deliberate. Presence older than empires, older than Leviathans, older even than belief itself. It did not shimmer, it did not pulse, it simply was, and its size defied comprehension. The Leviathans reoriented instantly, falling into a wide crescent formation around the direction of the entity's approach, their glows shifting from calming blue to defensive amber. Marek stared, frozen. "They're positioning again," he whispered. Arin nodded. "They've never done this publicly before."
Out.
Kelly tore her gaze from the screen and turned back to Arin, voice shaking. "You know what that thing is?" Arin didn't answer immediately. He watched the screens, breathing slow and steady, as though aligning his thoughts. Then softly, "I know what they called it." What I give the... And she felt the weight of the words before he spoke them. They called it the remnant. Kelly's breath caught. "What does that mean?" "Something that survived what came before us," Arin said. "Something still looking for what erased its time." across the screens. The approaching mass continued to grow in clarity. It wasn't a ship, it wasn't an organism, but it wasn't a void. Either it was the shape of an absence so perfect, it created its own presence. "This isn't an enemy," Kelly said, voice quiet with dawning horror. "It's a witness." Arin nodded. "And a judge." Council realized it at the same moment. Whatever was coming was not here for war, it was here too. "Observe." Speaker Aravel's voice ticked. Through a cum patch. "Ambassador Hale," she said lowly. "If you know anything else that might help us understand," Arin cut her off. "You don't need to understand it. You just need to choose what side of history you want it to see." Eh? Quiet crackle of energy shimmered across the outer shields of the station as the remnant drifted. Nearer, though drifted felt like the wrong word. It was too intentional, too unblinking. The Leviathans did not attack. They stood firm, silent barriers between the remnant. In a galaxy still trying to comprehend itself, Kelly stepped to stand beside Arin, pale fur bristling. "They're waiting for us to act, aren't they?" she asked. "The Leviathans could destroy us all if they wanted, but instead they're waiting for the Council to choose." Arin met her gaze. That's what they always wanted. Not submission. Not fear. Just choice. Meanwhile, more delegates stood. The Alkari emissary wings half-folded. Feathers dimmed with shock spoke softly through the universal translator. All this time, Earth wasn't hiding behind force. He turned toward Arin. They were hiding behind faith. The words struck deeper than any data dump could. Have faith in each other, in something unseen, in something greater, something greater. In the room shifted. Mark saw it too, not physically, but in posture, in the way beings of every world began to look at one another not with suspicion, but with recognition. Speaker Aravel raised her voice once more, quiet but clear. "Let the motion stand." She struck the gavel, and let the new question begin. Does Earth remain among us? Not as the weakest voice, but as the one that believed we could be more. The chamber screens flickered again, and at that exact moment, like an answer from God, every Leviathan ignited in full luminescent brilliance, a light the color of living. Starlight, the remnant slowed, watched, waited, as if the entire universe had paused to hear the galaxy speak. And in that silence, every species realized the truth. The next word spoken would decide the future of everything. For a moment, no one on the council moved. It was as if every species, every culture, every world represented in that chamber had fallen into one collective breath, one held too long. The remnant hovered in the void like judgment incarnate. The Leviathans stood between it and all life, like a living wall of devotion. The chamber's air felt dense. Every heartbeat was a drum in someone's chest. The vote wasn't just a formality anymore. It wasn't about protocol. It wasn't even about Earth. It was about who they chose to be in the face of something bigger than anything they had imagined. Speaker Aravel's voice rose again. Clear, but trembling, the motion is on the table. All council members must now answer a simple yes or no. A pause. Does Earth remain? Lights across the chamber dimmed. Voting crystals glowed faintly in the slots before each delegate. Arin Hale bowed his head, nod with worry. But with something else, belief.ca Eli Sith looked at him from across the room and finally understood what all the calm had been for. The silence. The restraint. The patience. He hadn't been waiting for the vote. He had been waiting for the moment. They deserved the truth he held. The first hand lifted. The seraph crystalline being. Her crystal pulsed with deep gold. "Earth stays," she said softly. "Let the galaxy retain its guide." The Alkari delegate stood next, wings folding over his chest. "Earth stays. Not because they need us, but because we need them," a murmur rippled. Movement followed. One by one, lights activated. Some said nothing, just pressed their glowing stones. Some needed to speak. Others broke protocol and wept quietly into their hands, realizing just how much faith they'd lacked not in humans, but in possibility. But then, the vote that mattered most. Ralcadix of the Vrac stood up slowly. Not in arrogance this time, but in something closer to humility. The room shuddered with tension. He lifted the obsidian. Crystal placed it in the yes column. He said, "Nothing." His silence said everything. The chamber erupted. Relief, wonder, disbelief. Earth. State Earth belonged. And at the center of it all, Arin Hale didn't smile, didn't bow, didn't even speak. He simply let the moment exist without claiming it. Kelly watched him, eyes glistening not with awe now, but with a sudden sense of recognition. Humans weren't the mystery. They were the mirror. Speaker Aravel raised the gavel for the final time, by unanimous acceptance. Earth shall remain a full and protected member of this council. She paused. And this council will never again ignore what walks beside us unseen. She struck the gavel. The sound echoed across time as if on cue. The Leviathans shifted their luminescence, not aggressive, not predatory, just present. A show of support, of guardianship. Then, for a heartbeat, something else happened, something no one in the chamber would ever forget. The remnant, the ancient, unknowable thing waiting beyond the wall of Guardian's dash disappeared. No ripple, no light, no scream, just gone. As if the vote had satisfied a cosmic question, Merrick. Exos let out a shaky breath. What? What does that mean? Arin Hale looked at him calmer than ever. It means we answered. Then, quietly, as if speaking to himself because someone wanted us to live, he looked up at the Leviathans. And for the first time in the entire trial, his voice carried the warmth of gratitude. Thank you. The great beings rippled in response, not with words, but with light a pulse that washed the sky in shimmering celestial gold. A reminder that some protectors do not speak in language. They speak in legacy. But even with the galaxy united at last, something still waited beyond the starlight, something no one had prepared for. The council chamber began to disperse slowly, like a tide pulling back from shore. Delegates left in clusters, some quiet, some whispering in astonishment, others in visible contemplation. There were no cheers, no celebrations. The weight of what had just happened didn't allow. That it wasn't victory, it was responsibility. But for the first time in its history, the galaxy had chosen responsibility together. Arin Hale remained in the chamber long after most had gone. His team gathered around him, Merrick, Donald, and the others, exhausted but relieved. Kelly lingered nearby, still processing everything she'd learned. The remnants' withdrawal, Merrick said. Checking his handheld console, it happened right when the vote passed. Exactly like it was waiting for an answer. Arin nodded. It was. Kelly stepped forward timidly. So, was it a test? Of us, Arin hesitated. It wasn't looking to destroy us, he said. Not immediately. It was looking to see if we were worth surviving. Kelly swallowed. And we passed. For now, the words held no comfort. Only truth. Kelly looked away, her voice cracking softly. I thought peace was something earned by ending conflict. Arin said nothing at first. He knew the real answer required more than explanation. So he walked toward the central podium, the same place he had stood when the Leviathans revealed themselves. He placed one hand on its edge. Peace isn't the absence of danger, he said. It's the choice to protect others from it, even when they don't know it's there. He turned his head toward the window, where the Leviathans still hovered in the void. Silent sentinels in a sky made for poetry, and humans didn't do it alone, he added softly. Kelly watched his profile in the dimming hall light, the tiredness. Yes, but something else too. Hope. Not naive. Not fragile. Something stronger. Something earned. What happens now? She finally asked. Arin took a breath. We train them. Kelly blinked. Train who? The galaxy, Arin said, turning fully toward her now. They know now what's out there. What's coming? What's been watching? What's been held back for centuries? His tone was timeless. If we want them to survive the things that hunt in the spaces between realities, they'll need more than fleets and treaties. Merrick nodded grimly. They'll need faith. Kelly looked between them. Understanding dawning. Faith not in weapons but in unity. Faith not in dominance, but in belief, in effort, in each other. Suddenly the lights flickered again, but this time, not in warning. A single message appeared on every console screen simultaneously. Leviathan Protocol signaled request for private counsel with human ambassador. Merrick exhaled. They want you. Arin nodded and turned toward the exit. Kelly started to follow, but paused as she reached the threshold. She looked up toward the stars, toward the massive, watchful forms beyond the glass, in that infinite expanse.
No.
In that moment of humility and awe, the same question pulsed through her mind. Why us? Arin stopped at the door, sensing her thoughts somehow. Without turning, he answered, because we were the ones who asked. Kelly met his eyes, voice barely a whisper. Asked for what? Arin looked into the void and spoke the most important truth of all. Not to be saved. Let the weight of it settle. But to learn how to save others. A hum of Leviathan's song resonated through the stations. Off this time. Approving, calling, Arin. Took one final step toward the exit and spoke quietly. Come on. The future doesn't wait. The door opened. He walked through. But deep within the Leviathan Council, humanity would soon discover the cost of protection and the price they'd one day be asked to pay. The chamber where the Leviathans had summoned Arin. It's unlike anything built by hands or machines. It wasn't a room made of walls, but of atmosphere and presence. A spherical hall of low gravity drifted beneath a shimmering canopy of star-patterned light. No doors, no guards. Only a threshold of energy that parted when Arin stepped through, and closed behind him like a tide sealing the shore. Merrick wasn't allowed inside. Neither was Eli. This was a meeting not of species, but of intent. The floor wasn't solid, more like a pool of gravity held in place by song. Arin stepped lightly on its surface, watching ripples twist through the patterns underfoot. Then the voice came, not in sound, not in vibration, in presence. Welcome, Arin Hale. He lifted his gaze. The Leviathans weren't physically present, but their forms hovered like echoes of mass and scale, emerging through projection fields that let their consciousness occupy the room. Their luminescence pulsed in slow waves, sending gentle kinetic ripples through the chamber. Arin bowed his head. Not as a subject, but as a friend. I came because you called. Because the balance has shifted, Grandfather Deep replied. Because the remnant saw us intervene. The warmth of their bond dimmed slightly, and now it knows this galaxy is no longer silent. Arin nodded. I understand. Do you? Another Asta, smaller projection. Its form slender but still vast beyond comprehension. The silence has been the shield. The moment we were seen, the storm changed. Arin closed his eyes briefly. Saw the council chamber. Saw the fear of the delegates. The shadow entity's invasion. The remnant's cold observation. He opened his eyes again. Yes, silence protected us. But nothing lasts without choice. Okay. A pause, then Grandfather Deep murmured. And choice is what we must now give them. Light rippled through all 12 projections simultaneously. The patterns in the floor shifted, forming a symbol Arin had only ever seen once before in the archives beneath. Earth's council dome. A pattern that looked like a ring around a star. The Leviathan oathmark. The time for silence is over. Grandfather Deep said, Now you must speak. Arin's voice didn't tremble, but his hands curled slowly at his sides. What do you need us to do? Teach them, the Leviathan answered. Teach them how to see what has been ignored. Teach them how to defend without destroying. How to stand without swallowing the weak. He hesitated, then added quietly, Teach them how to hear the song. Arin exhaled. Not in fear, but in gravity. The responsibility. The enormity. The weight of becoming not just a representative, but a bridge between species and forces older than language. What of the remnant? Arin asked. Will it return? It did not take long for the answer. It always returns, soft, heavy, honest, because it does not seek victory, only balance. Arin looked up, eyes searching for the truth beneath the words. You're telling me it's not evil? Ripple of light, almost relief in motion? Correct, Grandfather Deep said. No more than gravity is evil, or fire. It is consequence. It comes when the scales tilt too far. Arin's breath caught. Then this was a warning. Yes, not just to us. No, to everyone. The hall pulsed brighter in answer, for the first time. Arin fully understood. Humanity hadn't been protected because it was special. It had been protected because it asked not for power, but for stewardship. He bowed his head again. Then we'll teach them. We'll show them what it means to stand with the Leviathans instead of behind them. The room resonated deep. Harmonic joy. Then we will stand with you until the last star dies. Arin's throat tightened, not with fear, but with purpose. But far from the council, in a place where no Leviathan sang, another presence stirred, and it was done waiting. In a corner of the galaxy where no council ship patrolled, where starlight fell on worlds untouched by peace, something old was waking up. It was not a ship waking. It was not a life form. It was a memory shaped into metal and bone, a forgotten remnant of a civilization wiped out before the Leviathans began to guard the stars. A species with only one surviving purpose: revenge. The vessel, if one could call it, that hovered in the cold void. Its form looming like a tomb built from shattered worlds. Broken monoliths of crystal armor jutted from its hull. Organic tendrils coiled like veins across impossible machinery. But at its heart, buried beneath centuries of silence, life pulsed. Not life as the galaxy knew. Something worse. Something preserved. The last mind of a species that had been devoured by the same cosmic forces the Leviathans protected against. A being that had watched its world die, helpless. A being that had seen the Leviathans intervene elsewhere, but not for them. It hadn't forgotten. It hadn't forgiven its consciousness. Awakened and intelligence stitched together from trauma and echo. The tendrils along the hull twitched like a dying plant, clawing its way back to the surface. For the first time in millennia, it spoke. There was no mouth, no sound, just thought. You saved them, the tendrils Viabra, but not us. Silence that felt like a void stared back. We were not protected. The being's pulse intensified. Power surging through whatever heart remained in the vessel. We were not chosen, and beneath that truth, another was born, so we will choose ourselves. The ship-shape-mind-shape-world-shape trembled, and a violent cascade of energy burst from its hull like a scream. Breaking the surface of a quiet sea, no signal, no words, just purpose. It began to move, then slow at first, then faster, toward the places where Leviathan presence was weakest, where no one was watching, where silence could be broken in a new way. Not for balance, not for protection, but for vengeance. Meanwhile, Arin Hale exited the Leviathan's sanctum with a changed gaze. Not hardened, focused, not depleted, clarified. Merrick stood waiting, trying to read his friend. How'd it go? He asked. Arin didn't answer right away. He looked beyond him, through the viewing window, where the Leviathans hovered like ancient lighthouses in a sea of dark. They're not asking us to follow, Arin said quietly. They're asking us to lead too. Merrick raised a brow. Lead them? No, Arin said, looking at him fully now. Lead everyone else. The Leviathans aren't here to change the galaxy. They're here to protect it. But the galaxy still has to change itself. Kelly had been standing to the side, listening. She stepped closer, grappling with the weight of it. And what if they don't listen? What if the other worlds reject this? Arin met her gaze. Then we teach them anyway. He said it so simply, so firmly, that Kelly wondered if she'd ever misunderstood humanity more than she had at the beginning of all this. It wasn't strength that held the humans together. It was conviction. The belief that no matter how unready the galaxy was, someone had to be ready for them. But before she could speak again, every console in the hallway flashed with a crimson alert. Unauthorized energy signature, detected origin, unknown threshold, violation imminent. Merrick cursed under his breath. Another breach? Arin stared at the alert. No, he said slowly, this is something else. He turned toward the stars as the Leviathan's bioluminescent patterns brightened in silent alarm. Kelly whispered the question everyone felt rising, like a cold tide behind her ribs. What now? Arin exhaled, and for the first time in 3 days, he didn't look calm. He looked ready now, he said. We find out who else has been watching, because not every silence in the galaxy was a shield somewhere the sound of a blade being sharpened. The new alert spread through the Concord station like a whisper, trying to become a scream. Not a breach like before, not a tear in reality, no Leviathan matching. Signature, something different, something intentional, Ari. Hale and his team surged through the halls toward the emergency command center. Merrick already connected to security data streams. Kelly patching into communications with the sensor deck, but the screens told them nothing, just a pulsing, growing signature from deep space too distant to track visually, too precise to be natural. The council was already assembling again in a rush, their faces haunted with the exhaustion of sudden clarity. We thought we were done, someone muttered. We thought wrong, came the reply. Speaker. Aravel made eye contact with Arin as he entered, this time not as a skeptic, but as someone who had seen enough innocents die in silence. Ambassador Hale, she said shakily, is this another remnant? Arin studied the data streaming across the monitors. No, he said after a long moment. The remnant observes before it judges. This is something else. Kelly's screen pulsed with a decrypted signal and she gasped. I'm picking up something weird. Not just energy, memory. Merrick looked at her. Memory. Kelly turned the display to show the pulsing waveform lined with intermittent organic patterns, like ghosts of neural impulses riding on a carrier frequency. It's a communication, she said, voice rising. But not in language, more like an emotion pressed into signal. Arin leaned closer. The waveform flickered, and for one fractured moment, a shape stitched itself into the signal. A world burning, then gone. Arin's breath caught. They're showing us something. The delegates leaned forward, horrified curiosity pulling them like gravity. Kelly ran a rapid spectrum filter. Enhancing the signal, another flash. A planet with crystalline structures, entire cities made of refracting geometry being swallowed by void things that looked too much, like what the Leviathans had repelled. Then another flash. Figures fleeing, weapons failing, a final signal. You were not there. Kelly froze. They're sending this to us, she said, to the council. Merrick's voice was hoarse. Someone who survived. Someone who no, Arin said quietly. Someone who didn't. Kelly looked at him. A message from the dead. A message from the avenged, Arin said. His eyes narrowed slightly. And the forgotten? Suddenly, the energy signature spiked. The Leviathan still arrayed around the station in a protective halo shifted suddenly, their formation tightening. Their bodies sang low-resonance pulses of warning, not in aggression, but in grief. Speaker Aravel gripped her podium. What does that mean? Arin didn't look at her. He looked at the stars. The Leviathans know this signature. They've seen it before, and, she whispered, they failed it. The words hit the room like a blade. Arin turned toward the council. Shoulders square. There was a civilization that didn't survive. One the Leviathans couldn't save. One that died before humanity ever walked in their shadow. Eric swallowed. And now they're survivors if they exist. Blame them.
Always,
Arin said. Because we are the ones they protected. Instead, the silence that followed was not political. It was human. It was universal. Kelly's eyes widened as another pattern resolved itself inside the transmission. Tendrils pulsing like veins, not malicious, but desperate. We became your ghosts. The final pulse of the transmission shook the room. Then it stopped. The sensors went quiet. The galaxy held still. What do we do? Kelly asked. Arin exhaled slowly, the weight of history on his shoulders. We stop pretending the silence doesn't hurt anyone, he said. We find this survivor, or this message bearer, and we face what we left behind. He turned toward the stars, and for the first time, we go looking, not to defeat something. He paused, but to answer it, because sometimes the loudest threat isn't a war being waged, but a question being asked. For the first time since the Galactic Concord was founded, a summons was issued not to demand presence, but to request unity, not out of ceremony, not out of tradition, but out of necessity, because now the galaxy didn't face a threat. It faced a question, and if they failed to answer it, something just as devastating as invasion would follow: condemnation. Arin Hale stood before the Council again, in defense of Earth this time, but in service to something larger than any world. Every surviving delegate was present. Even those who rarely spoke, even those who had once mocked, even those who used silence as a weapon. Rather than a tool, Arin's first words cut through the chamber like glass. We are not being hunted. He let the weight of it settle. We are being remembered. The screens behind him played the visual fragments again: the burning planet, the falling crystalline city, the swarm, the void mouth consuming the last light of a civilization long dead. Every delegate watched again. No. One interrupted. Whoever sent that signal, Arin continued, wants us to feel what they felt, to know what wasn't saved, to stand in the emptiness they died in, step back, looking out across the species that now stared at him with different eyes. We were spared. They weren't. And now their memory has come back looking for answers. Kelly sat near the chamber's side rail, recording everything with her field recorder, not as a researcher now, but as a witness. As someone who almost didn't survive her own ignorance, we have two choices, Arin said. We can ignore the message and guarantee that we become the next civilization they protest against. He paused, or we can face them. Show them the truth. Tell them the silence wasn't intentional. And if they don't believe us? Asked the Pelthade representative, voice trembling. Arin held his gaze without blinking. Then we ask forgiveness. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, not disbelief now, but self-reflection. The Vrax warlord, Ralkadek, spoke slower. More deliberate than the version of himself from just days ago. You speak of guilt, he said. But what can we do for someone already gone? Arin nodded. We can honor them. Acknowledge them. Refuse to let their memory drown in the shadows they left behind. He scanned the crowd, and we can find whatever is left of them. Kelly's heart pounded. Even if it's only one. One survivor? One fragment of a people. Arin nodded. Even then, and if they hate us, she whispered. Arin's voice softened. Then we listen anyway. Speaker Aravel stood. Her posture had shifted, no longer the stance of someone presiding over a political proceeding, but someone humbled in the presence of truth. What do you need, Ambassador Hale? Arin looked up at her, hope flickering behind his calm. 3 things, he said. 1. A coalition. A small one. Volunteers from every species who believe that lost voices still matter. 2. Access to the Concord's deep-range scans and archives. We need to find out where that signal started. And 3. He turned to the Leviathans beyond the glass. Permission to let the galaxy hear the song. Every delegate stared, confused, curious, uneasy. Speaker. Aravel exhaled. You want the Leviathans to reveal themselves to more than just this chamber. For the first time, Arin confirmed. We must stop letting only the powerful see truth. Because silence protects people, But silence also leaves wounds hidden. Outside the station, the Leviathans pulsed in faint green, through colors like twilight echoing against eternity, and in the dark beyond. The pulsing remnant signals stirred again. The forgotten were waiting, and now the galaxy would go to them. And as the coalition formed and the trackers lit the stars, something woke in the dark and whispered, "Finally, they hear us." The coalition formed quietly, without fanfare, without banners, without the arrogance of conquest. Humans, Pelthade explorers, Seraph archivists, Alkri scouts, even a single Vrax warrior who now spoke with steel and remorse, they gathered in the launch bay beneath the council chambers. Beneath the stars, still trembling with what they had shown and what they still withheld, Arin Hale stood at the forefront this time. He wasn't here as a defendant or a diplomat. He stood as something far more meaningful. A messenger. Kelly Sith adjusted her recording gear beside him. Trembling, but her eyes shone with something new. Not fear, conviction. "They don't want to destroy us," she whispered. "They want to be known." Arin nodded gently. "And the least we can do is listen." Behind them, Relkadek stepped forward, armor stripped of ornamentation, his voice steady. "I once thought strength meant victory," he rumbled. "But strength can also mean memory. I am here to learn that kind." He fell in behind the others, one by one. Each species stepped forward, one by one. They chose to be part of what came next. Behind the launch bay window, the Leviathans loomed like mountains in the void, watching, guarding. Echoing bioluminescence, as if writing history across their impossible skin, the boarding platform hummed as the coalition. Vessel-powered anaship made not for war, but for witness. Before they boarded, Arin looked back toward the observation deck. The stars framed the moment perfectly. In that moment, his thoughts weren't political. They weren't tactical. They were deeply, quietly human. He remembered nights on Earth, lying on his back as a boy, staring at the same stars now swirled in alien skies, wondering who might be out there, wondering if there was someone bigger watching over them, too. And now he knew. There was. But that presence didn't save everyone, and it shouldn't be asked to. That was the galaxy's task now. That was humanity's task now. He breathed in and let out the words that had shaped his entire species' approach to the stars. This universe was never ours alone. Kelly looked up at him, her voice thick with echo. But it can be ours. Together. The loading hatch opened with a hiss. The crew stepped in. Lights dimmed. The ship detached from the docking clamps and drifted forward into the embrace of the Leviathan formation, as if escorted by gods asleep under the sea of galaxies. On every world, council channels were unlocked. Every civilian, every student, every farmer in general saw the Leviathans for the first time, and for the first time in millennia. The protectors did not hide. They sang. Not a battle call, not a warning, a requiem, a promise, a welcome. A sound meant to reach the ones still hurt in the dark, and in that same dark. A forgotten vessel, half living and half tomb, pulsed once more. This time, not in threat, but in response. A broadcast shimmered across the void, not made of words or wants, but of emotion. Unmistakable even across species. "You heard us." The Leviathans flared in shimmering reply cosmic. Benevolent sorrow-ed, and together, the galaxy sent back a message. Led by a species once mocked for its silence, you were never forgotten. As the ship carrying Rin and the coalition dwindled into the star-swept black, Kelly's voice, quiet and full, recorded it all. And so the galaxy learned that silence can hold both wounds and wisdom, and it chose to answer with light. And